Welcome to the SpiritWoke Podcast, podcasting from the beautiful city of Stillwater, the birthplace of Minnesota. Are you going through a spiritual awakening? Do you wish to learn more about continued spiritual growth and want to meet others who are on a similar journey? We hope that this podcast and its community can be a meaningful resource for you. The SpiritWoke Podcast welcomes special guests from around the globe who share personal stories of their awakening journey, along with details of spiritual abilities they've developed along the way. So buckle up and get ready for this exciting episode. And now, here's your host, Adam Dince.
Friends, welcome back to the SpiritWoke Podcast. We are officially back from a long summer hiatus, at least what really feels like a long summer hiatus. And we're so excited to be back with you guys, just talking about all things spirituality and spiritual awakening. I want to thank you so much for your continued listenership, if that's a word. So thank you for that. And today I am really excited to talk to you about one of my favorite topics, past life and life between lives, regression therapy. And, while most of you know me as the host of the SpiritWoke Podcast, what you might not know is that I'm also the founder of Sacred Stairways Healing. You can check out our website at sacredstairways.com. And one of our primary offerings is past life and between lives regression. And it's a passion of mine, and I'm thrilled to be able to offer it to my clients. And so today we're going to talk all about past and in between life, or between lives, or otherwise known as life between lives regression. And so normally I bring a guest onto the show and ask the guest lots of questions, but today is going to be the first time in the year and a half that we've been doing this podcast where I am the guest. So I will let you know in the upfront, though, that I do not plan on interviewing myself like I do with our other guests. So I'm just going to talk for a bit, and I want to share with you a little bit about my passion, which is past life and between lives regression. But before we dig into the details about past life and between life regressions, I want to share with you a little bit about how I discovered, call it this beautiful healing modality, or just a way to venture into a past or a life between lives, however you want to consider it. But I want to share a story of how I discovered this. And I want to take you a little bit back to, I guess it's quite a ways back nowadays, to 2005, 15 years ago. My dad passed away in 2005 as a result of a terrible car accident. And, my dad was a single father. He raised me by himself. My mother was not around for one reason or another. And so my dad was really the only parent that I had. And when my dad crossed over, it was like losing my best friend. It was like losing my entire safety net. And I was lost. It was a traumatic car accident. So in addition to feeling the pain and sadness and the grief of losing my dad, the trauma that was experienced from the horribleness of the car accident was just a double whammy for me. And so a couple of days after my dad passed, so my dad got in a car accident. He was in a coma for a couple of months in Boston, in a hospital in Boston, and back and forth between, at the time I was living in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I was flying back and forth from Scottsdale to Boston to be with him in the hospital. And we made the call. I made the call to do not resuscitate. And of course, there came a point where the doctors said, we think this is it. And we just let him pass. And, about a day or so after my dad passed, I got in contact with a dear friend of mine at the time in Scottsdale who owned many restaurants, a very successful restaurateur. And she said, Adam, there's this medium who lives in Los Angeles. I've trusted him with my journey through the entirety of my adult life, and he's never been wrong. And I think you should talk to him. He can help you connect with your dad. And at this point, I was not really a big believer in psychics or mediums or intuitives. And in fact, I probably mocked people with this gift and ability more than far more than I trusted that what their gift was real. And so, but at this point, I think my skepticism of that gave way to just needing something. I missed my dad so bad, and I just needed to know that he was okay. I needed to say what I didn't get to say to him before he crossed over, and so I was just looking for anything. So my friend Fran gave me the phone number of this gentleman, and I gave him a call, and he did an absolutely beautiful reading. He connected with my dad, and it was such a healing experience for me, just to know that you can reach those on the other side once they've crossed over. And so, for me, this experience was mind blowing, and it got me thinking about what happens after we die. Questions that I'd never considered. Sure, I'd considered, is there life after death? But, to me, I never really considered that it might be possible to speak to those who have crossed over. And of course, that started opening up other questions that I had in terms of, do we reincarnate? What are we like when we're on the other side? And if one person can connect with those who have crossed over, can anyone do it, right? And just lots of different questions that I had. And I'm sure a lot of you listening in have probably had similar questions in your life. And so, I began a journey at that point in time. I began listening to lots of stuff and reading everything I could regarding the paranormal. One of my favorite shows, and I believe it's still on the air, though I haven't listened to it in many years, is Coast to Coast AM. And I learned so much about everything from astral projection to remote viewing, shadow people, aliens, ghosts, and people who experience near-death experiences, and even folks who talked about past life and reincarnation. It was a really awesome show, and I'm so glad that I had found it back then, because it really enlightened me about things that I'd never really heard of before. And I found myself really drawn to those topics, and I discovered sort of a mystical aspect of myself that I never knew existed. I always was fascinated with God and the concept of God, and is there a God? And I had studied quite a few different religions or faiths, and I was anyway, not to go into too much detail there, but all of this stuff was new to me, and it was so fascinating. And I think if you listen to some of our past episodes on the SpiritWoke podcast, you'll find that a lot of those topics are covered, just because they're fascinating, and so I like hearing about them and sharing other people's insights about all of those things. So anyway, many years later, after beginning the awakening process, I met an intuitive here in Minneapolis, and she happens to be extremely gifted at past life readings. And at this point, I wouldn't say I was a believer in past lives and reincarnation. I was definitely interested in it. And frankly, I almost didn't want to believe that we reincarnated and that we came back to the earth plane over and over and over again. Because let's face it, guys, this life can be difficult. It can be challenging. We all have bills to pay. We all have responsibilities, and maybe I think my belief was that just one time here was enough. Didn't need to go around a second, third, fourth, or maybe even 1,000th time. But I was still interested in exploring it. And I wanted to see what would happen if I met with someone who was an intuitive that was able to tap into my past life experiences. And so I sat with this medium for, or I shouldn't say medium, the psychic for about an hour and a half. And I think within this past life reading, she touched on about between 7 or 10 different past lives that I experienced. And it was interesting because before we started the reading portion, she said, don't worry so much about the experience itself because they may sound completely outlandish to you. It may not it may just seem too made up for your brain to process and accept as truth. But listen to the themes within the story and try to identify any patterns from these past lives that I'm going to share with you that you're experiencing in your current life. And there were so many. In fact, each of the past lives that she read to me they made a lot of sense. They weren't as outlandish as she said. A lot of the pieces fit together, and there were so many different things that tied into what I was experiencing in this current life. And so at that point, I would say I became a believer in past lives and reincarnation. And I wouldn't say that it was a knowing, because there is a difference, I believe, between a belief and a knowing, right? When you believe something, it's faith. When you know something, it's because you've experienced it, you've gone through it, and so you just kind of know it, right? And so a little while after doing the past life reading, I discovered a book called Journey of Souls by Dr. Michael Newton. And Dr. Newton was a master hypnotherapist and psychologist, and he had conducted over 7,000 regressions as part of his work. And in doing these regressions, past life regressions, he discovered what we call life between lives, or between lives regressions. And essentially, what the between lives is the life that we live after our soul leaves this body and before we come back into a new body. We have our life between lives. And Journey of Souls, I highly, highly recommend it. Amazing book if you haven't read it. The book blew my mind. It was essentially Dr. Newton transcribed a variety of the sessions, the regression sessions that he did with clients, and hearing these people's experiences were mind-blowing. And I'd never really even heard of a past life or let alone a between life regression. And so I became very interested in wanting to experience that myself. And so I did a little bit of hunting, and I actually found a regressionist who studied under Dr. Newton to do a past life regression with me. And so it was interesting. I met with this gentleman in his home, and the first time that we met, we had a really pleasant conversation. It was about an hour. It was an intake. And before I left, he asked me, were there any other questions that I had? And, one thing that you'll, if you haven't learned about me, if you're starting to listen to this podcast now for the first time, you'll find that I am a skeptic oftentimes, and I'm working on that. But it does take me a lot to believe in things. So I'm not the kind of person that blindly accepts things. I still need some level of proof that things, exist or that things are true. And so my question to the hypnotherapist was, how many people come in for a past life regression and think that it's not going to work? Meaning when they go under hypnosis, they're not going to be able to see a past life. And he said, Adam, pretty much everybody. And I said, okay, good. I don't feel so alone. So from that point, I came back about a week later and experienced a past life regression. And it was a really, really beautiful experience. It was beautiful. It was healing. And for me, the biggest difference between the past life reading that I had with the intuitive and the regression with my hypnotherapist was that in regression, I actually saw my past life. So, maybe call it a third eye, or maybe, I guess I should say, maybe call it, I saw it through my third eye. It's hard to know, but all I can tell you is that it was as vivid as the most vivid dream I'd ever had. And, for me, it was sort of like seeing different still frames. So I'll explain to you a little bit of what happened. So essentially, once I was put under hypnosis, my hypnotherapist guided me to a tunnel, and at the end of the tunnel, there was this light. And as I walked down the tunnel and got to the light, and I pushed my way through, I began to see things, if you will. It was the only way I can explain it is kind of like if you're being born, right? When you come out of your mother's womb and you see whatever you see as a baby for the first time. It was just very bright, and I didn't know what I was seeing, and it was kind of all over the place. And my hypnotherapist guided me to look down towards my feet and see what kind of shoes was I wearing, any kind of shoes. And then I saw my feet, and then I saw my legs, and all of a sudden the memory started coming back into my mind. And they were very much like still frames, like looking at pictures. It wasn't like being in a video or actually, being the person in that past life that I was seeing and actually living out the experience. I was just kind of looking at these still frames. But with these still frames, imagine looking at a photo of a scene that you hadn't experienced, but having a knowing about what that scene was. So for me, that's how every still frame that I saw was. And I experienced many memories of that past life, including my death scene. I experienced both my death and so where I was on my bed, and my wife was at the time was leaning over me, holding my hand, staring at me, and I experienced taking my last breath. And again, it was like looking at a still frame. So I wasn't moving. My wife in this past life wasn't moving, but intuitively I knew what was happening in that scene or in that memory. And then after I died, I experienced my soul, my spirit leaving my body and traveling as a spirit. And I experienced seeing my memorial service as a soul. And after I saw this memorial service, I floated up into the ether to the other side, whatever it is you want to call it. But it was a very dark, very peaceful place. So I didn't actually go into the light. I didn't make it that far. But I did float into this beautiful, peaceful darkness that I like to refer to as consciousness. It was just for the first time in my life, there was no chatter in my mind. That inner voice, that inner critic was quiet. It was just kind of just floating in this really peaceful state of consciousness. And so I don't want to spend the entire time talking about my past life regression, because I want to talk to you about what past life regressions are and how they work and all of that cool stuff. But I do want to say that after experiencing my past life regression, I knew that it was part of my soul's path to help others experience their own past lives and even between lives regressions. And so a little bit after experiencing my past life regression, I began studying hypnotherapy and earned my certification as a hypnotherapist. And I'm certified through the INLP Center as well as the International Hypnosis Federation. And I'm honored to be part of both of those fantastic organizations. But I knew it was in my soul's path to help others experience these. And so I earned my certification. And now I work with clients across the country by phone and and through the web, whether it be through Zoom or Google Meet, to help my clients experience their own past lives and between lives. And it's such an incredible honor to be a part of such a sacred journey that people take. And honestly, just being the therapist that sits on the other side of the client, where I'm just listening to what the client is experiencing and taking notes, but just really absorbing what they're seeing, whether it be a past or a between lives experience. It's mind-blowing. And everybody has a different experience, and everybody has a different story, and everybody sees something a little bit different. And but at the same time, there's this thread of similarity between many of the past life experiences and between life experiences that my clients have shared with me. And so it truly is a beautiful thing. And experiencing my past life as well as helping my clients experience theirs has turned me from a believer to a knower. It has helped me overcome much of the fear of death that I have, and I know it also helps my clients with that as well. There's also a lot of healing, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, that can be found through experiencing a past life or a between lives regression. And it's just such a powerful experience to see yourself in a past life, because you start to stop sweating the small stuff, right? I mean, I remember right after experiencing my past life regression, sometimes before going into meetings at work, I'd get anxious. I don't know why, but I just would. But after my past life regression, I would say, why am I getting worried about this? I'm an infinite soul. I know I'm an infinite soul. I know I've lived thousands of lives before the one I'm in now, and I might live even more afterwards. So what am I sweating this 30 minutes of a meeting, right? There's so much more to life than this meeting that I'm going to walk into. And so perspective, right? So past life regression gave me so much of a greater perspective. And what a beautiful healing experience it truly is. So before we get into past and between lives regression, I do want to talk to you a little bit about what a hypnotic regression is. So in a regression, so consider me the hypnotherapist, because that's what I am, and imagine that you're my client. So in a session, whether it's past or between lives, I'm going to guide you into a deeply hypnotic state. We call this a hypnotic induction. And so once you've reached that hypnotic state, I take you through a deepener. So I take you even deeper into the hypnotic state. I want to get you into a place where your conscious mind quiets and your subconscious mind opens up. Now, I do want to share that, and some people get really freaked out when they hear about hypnotherapy, because they think of going to the carnivals or the fairs and seeing people on stage, and the hypnotist comes by and snaps their finger, and the subject on stage goes out, right? They're hypnotized, they're in a hypnotic state, and they start barking like a dog or meowing like a cat, and clients think that that's what's going to happen to them, or that I'm going to plant suggestions into their mind that they don't want implanted, or or they're going to be out of control. That's another fear that some people have coming into hypnotherapy. And so I just want to dispel some of those rumors. So number one, there's nothing that I would, in a hypnotic state, that I would ever suggest to you that was not aligned with your soul's or your just say your soul's intentions, your soul's goals, if you will. And if I try to do that, your conscious mind would bring you right out of the hypnotic state, because when you're in a hypnotic state, it's not like you're asleep. It's not like where you're asleep and you're in a dream and you don't really have any control over what happens to you in that dream, right? You're very much in control. Everything I say to you, you hear with your conscious and your subconscious mind. And in fact, throughout this process, which we'll cover here in a minute, you and I are having a conversation. So I'm asking you questions. So what are you seeing? What are you doing? Is there anyone with you? And you're answering me, and we're going back and forth. So I just want you to know that in a hypnotherapy, you're not asleep, you're not unconscious or any of that. It's just, in fact, the way I explain it is you're actually more conscious than you are, because normally, because all of that chatter in your mind goes away, and you're so focused in this experience in the hypnotic state. And so once you're in the hypnotic state, you're nice, calm, and relaxed, what I begin to do is I begin to guide you back to a past life. So my process, I'll just share what my process is. So essentially, once you're in the hypnotic state, I take you down into a deepener. And in that deepener, I have you walk down a flight of stairs, 10 steps. And as I count you down, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you'll get to a place where you'll reach a hallway. And I'll have you imagine a hallway. And in this hallway, there are many doors. And each of those doors represent a past life that you live. And then from that point, I'm going to ask you to find a door that calls out to you. It may or may not look any different than the other doors in the hallway. It just depends whatever your imagination brings to the forefront, right? And so from there, essentially you pick the door and you walk through the door. And once you go through that door, and you're just visualizing this with your eyes closed while you're in the hypnotic state. And once you walk through that door, you're in your first memory. Now, what I want to say is that just because we're talking about past life, there are other types of regressions. So regressions can also apply to a current life. So if you had, say, an experience from your current life, maybe as a child, that impacts your thoughts, feelings, or behaviors, we can go back in time to that place, to that memory in your life where that trauma or pain or whatever it was occurred. And we can work through those until you've resolved those memories, till you've healed from those. And there absolutely can be a tremendous amount of healing that takes place in that spot. So now let me talk to you a little bit about how I work with clients in a past life. So once you walk through that door, and I shared in my story, my hypnotherapist guided me to the end of a tunnel, and at the end of the tunnel, there was the light that I walked through. It's the same thing. And I might work with different clients with different visualizations, depending on what your goal is, right? Some people see a hallway, some people see a tunnel. Some people just see a door, right? So it just depends. But once you walk through that, you see your first memory. And typically in that first memory, you're going to be tied to emotion. So within hypnotherapy, I'm going to have you really connect with those emotions of that memory. And what happens when you connect with the emotions of that memory, it makes the whether it's a still frame or whatever you're seeing even that much more vivid. And I'm just going to ask you questions, as I mentioned before, like, what are you seeing? Are you alone? Is there anyone with you? Is it daytime? Is it nighttime? Right? And I'm not going to give you any leading questions, right? So I'm not going to ask a question like, is it the 1700s? Right? Because that makes it easy to say, oh yeah, maybe it is. I'm going to leave them as open-ended as I possibly can, so that you can really use your intuition to understand what's going on. And so once you've experienced a memory and you fully explored it, I'm going to guide you to the next relevant memory. And we're going to go through all of these different memories. And it can take anywhere between an hour and a half and 3 hours. Sometimes client takes 4 hours to really process what they're seeing. And once we get to a place where I feel like you've really explored your life and the many memories and the relevant memories to your goal, and the intention that we set prior to beginning the past life regression, I'm then going to guide you to your death scene. And you're going to see how you died. And you may well experience your soul leaving your body. Many of my clients do. And that's such a profound moment for most of my clients, and really not just my clients, but anyone who experiences a past life regression. Because it's typically at that moment where you learn the lesson of that life, whatever that soul's lessons, whatever that karmic lesson was, you learn it, and it can be so healing. So for me, in my past life regression, the one that I experienced, I realized when I popped out of my body after I died was that I was very cold in that life, that I wasn't a very loving person, that I didn't let love in, and it was hard for me to give love out. And I remember looking over and seeing my body as my wife was leaning over me, over my dead body in the bed. And I was sobbing because I realized for the first time how much she loved me and that I never gave it back. And it was really an eye-opening experience for me, because at the time in my life, I was very much the same. in my current life, in this life that I'm living now. And so it really helped me understand that this was something I had struggled with for many lives, and knew it was something that I needed to work on. And so once you move past your death scene, either we'll come out of the past life regression there. Oftentimes, many of my clients end up experiencing going into what we call the between lives state, which I explained earlier. It's after your soul leaves your body, and before you come back for your next life, you enter this place called the between lives space. And you can really refer to it to whatever it is that some people call it heaven. Some people experience returning back into source energy, right? There's no heaven. There's no place. They just merge back with the source energy that where they come from. One of my clients recently experienced that, and it was so beautiful. And when she came out of regression, she said to me, Adam, there are no other doors that I need to walk through. I've experienced all I need to experience. I know that this is real. And it was such an awesome experience for me, because I haven't seen that. I personally haven't had a between lives done on me. So I don't know what any of my between lives were like, right? But I do know from my clients' experiences that they're absolutely beautiful. And so that's a past life regression. And I know we started touching on a life between life regression. So I want to explain a little bit about that too. So what is a life between life regression? So again, a life between life regression is that what you see, it's just like a past life, but it's that life that you live. And everything's life. It seems weird to say that it's life while you're on the other side, if you will, but it is. It's still an experience that you're having, and so you can explore the memories of what you experienced in that between lives space. So you may end up meeting your spirit guides. You may end up seeing your soul family and understanding who your soul family is, even in your current life right now. One of my clients had a beautiful experience in a between life space where she met the soul of her father, and she hadn't been able to forgive her dad for what her dad had done to her in this life. And her dad explained to her that he had chosen to incarnate with her, and they were very, very close members in their soul family, right? But he agreed to incarnate with her in this current life as her dad, because there were lessons that my client needed to learn, and her dad agreed to be the one to help her teach her those lessons. And in the earth plane, in this current life, what he did to her was very painful, and she found it difficult to forgive him for that. But when she saw his soul on the other side in the between life state, and was able to talk to him and truly understand why he did the things he did to her, she was able to forgive him, and she understood what the purpose of that happening was. And it was really a beautiful healing experience. And so that's what the between lives space is. It's very similar to past life, except instead of seeing a life that you've lived in the incarnated human state, you're seeing it as the soul state on the other side. And it's absolutely beautiful. So, and so how a between life works is, in a past life, you have your hallway, right? We talked about the doors, and you walk through one of the doors. A between life can happen one of two ways. Either A, I take you into a past life, and I quickly walk you through those memories to the place of your death scene. And then once you experience your death scene and your soul leaves your body, I then guide you to the between life space. And that's where your between life journey starts. If some folks, though, actually experience, and when I take them back into a past life, coming into the first memory they have is being a baby, right? And being an infant. And from there, instead of moving forward in their past life experience to the death scene, they actually go backwards, right? So they actually work back into the womb of the mother of their mother, and then back into the between life space. So it can either go that way, where from your birth backwards, or from a past life to death scene forward. And either one of those ways gets you into the between life state. And from there, it can be anywhere from an hour and a half to a 3-hour a session. And so if you've had a long past life regression session, it may be more difficult for you to easily transition into the between life state because it's hard work. It's fun work. It's brilliant work. It's exciting. But at some point you start to get tired a little bit and you're ready to call it a day. But some people have a shorter past life experience and move right into the between life space. Require my clients to at least experience a past life first before doing a between lives regression, just because, the death scene can be traumatic for some folks. So, if you had a past life where, let's just say you were a witch in Salem, Massachusetts, right? And we know what happened, unfortunately, to the witches where, they experience very painful, traumatic deaths. If you experience that and it's your first time, right? I guide you back to a life. Let's just say you start in the middle and we quickly work your way into to your death scene, and you experience maybe being guillotined. Well, that's a lot to process. And you may not make it to the between lives state at that point because you're dealing with what you've just seen. And so, what I would say is it's important for you to experience a past life first to be able to know what that might feel like from a reliving the traumatic experience before we move you into that between lives. It's much, much smoother. And frankly, you really do want to experience a past life just to see it before you experience between lives, because it's such a really, really cool thing. And so that's a little bit about what a past life is, how it works, what a life between life regression is, and how that works. And, it can be extremely healing and therapeutic, and oftentimes it is. And before we begin working on a past or between life, I will spend time talking about what your goals are. And we'll try and understand what you're hoping to accomplish. Some people, will ask, or just want to experience a past life or a between life because they think it's cool, which it is. And so you should see and experience that. Other people have very specific things that they want to work on. So maybe you have a phobia of water or heights, and you haven't experienced any kind of trauma in this life that would give you that fear. And so you possibly explore a past life then, right? And you find out where that trauma came from, because we set the intention that you're going to live a past life that helps you understand why you have this current phobia in your current life. You may have a reoccurring dream, right? That you're just wondering, why do I keep having this reoccurring dream? So maybe we will investigate a past life that would explain why you're having this dream. Maybe you're seeing a dream from another life. But a lot of clients will just say, I want to see a past life that serves the greatest good of the current life that I'm living. And so oftentimes the client will find, sort of that really strong connection between the life that they see in the past life experience and the current life. And the same can be said, people who set goals and intentions for the between lives is, I want to understand what my purpose is, right? What is my purpose in life? I want to know what I signed up for. and so there can be a variety of different intentions that you set, but I do like to get all of those things squared away so that your experience is really tailored to your goals and your expectations. So now, one of the questions that I get, and it's fair because, I shared with you earlier that, that I'm a skeptic. And so I know there are people who are skeptics as well and don't believe that there is such a thing as a past life or a between life, but they are aware that this type of therapy can be extraordinarily healing. And so I don't ever push my beliefs on anybody else. Now, I do believe that when you're seeing a past life or a between life, you're really seeing it. And my perspective is that you're not tapping into your subconscious mind to see your past life, or a between life, but you're tapping into your superconscious. You're tapping into your soul. You're tapping into your energetic body. and I believe that all of your memories are not stored locally in your brain. They're stored in your energetic body that you take with you from life to life to life. And we just have difficulty accessing that when we're in our human lives, because we forget, right? We come in and we forget, and we're so busy with everything else that we just don't tap into it. So from my perspective, what my belief is that when you get into the hypnotic state, it makes it easier, or makes it easy to access that superconscious or soul mind. And then you bring that memory in through your brain, and then you're able to see those memories through your third eye or through your brain. Now, there is a perfectly let me not say it that way. There's another reasonable theory for how it works, which is you really are tapping into your subconscious mind, not your superconscious, but your subconscious, which is a place in your brain, if you will, and you're tapping into it. And there's a theory that our brains communicate with us, our subconscious communicates with us through pictures and stories, right? So if you don't believe in past lives, you don't believe in reincarnation or any of that, then it's okay. You can still have a very similar experience. Believing in past lives is not a prerequisite to experience a past life regression. You can interpret it as that you're just letting your subconscious mind communicate with you about things that are going on in your current life through pictures and images that may be told through the story of a past or a between life. Either is okay. So our clients, are you really experiencing a past life or a life between lives? I believe so. And I would say that many of the hypnotherapists and folks who are trained to do this work would tell you the same. But that's our belief. There is no proof. So just know that you do not have to be tied to a specific belief one way or the other. But what I will say is that when most people come out of experiencing a past or a between life regression, they end up believing that they really did experience something significant, like a past life or a between life, and that it isn't just a function of their subconscious. So last but not least, how does this work virtually, right? So I told you earlier that, especially due to COVID, right? I try and keep a safe practice, and frankly, working with people virtually is great because you're not sitting in my office, and you're not worrying about whether I have COVID or if I'm sick, and I'm not worried about if you're sick or have COVID. Not to bring up COVID too much here, but you're in the comfort of your own home or home office, wherever it is that you are, and that allows you to completely relax. And when you don't have those other worries going on, it allows you to completely be in the moment. It also allows me to work with people, not just here locally in Minnesota, but across the country and really across the world. And so it's wonderful to be able to get a larger audience of people who are interested in doing this work with me. So the way I conduct my virtual past and between lives regressions is, for our first meeting, we'll do an intake session, which lasts about an hour. And you and I will meet would meet on Zoom or on Google Meet. And we just have a talk about, hypnotherapy, just explain a little bit more in detail how that works, talk a little bit more about past lives, talk about your goals, set intentions, make sure that we're all aligned on the same thing. And then we'll set a time to do your past or between life session. So then we'll reconvene for the actual regression session. And in that regression session, what happens is we're going to meet via Zoom because it's really important for me to be able to watch you. And I know it sounds really creepy, but it's really important for me to be able to watch your body as you're going through the past life regression, because that's going to tell me a lot about what you're experiencing, and it's going to help me understand how potentially to guide you. I'm going to be able to see your breathing just to make sure you're okay and that you're doing fine. I will say this, when you're going through a regression, you're not going to see anything that you're not able to handle or that your soul is not ready for you to see. So don't worry about seeing something that's going to completely mess you up, because I promise you it won't. It's all stuff that you're ready for. So with that being said, I'll have you position your camera to wherever you're going to be laying down. So I'm going to ask you to either be in a bed or a chair that reclines. And I want you to be in a position where you're really, really comfortable. Because if you feel any discomfort in the way you're sitting, if you're getting tired, in whatever position you're in, it may impact your ability to enter the hypnotic state. And so you'll have the camera focused on your bed or reclining chair, but then I'm going to call you on the phone. So I'm going to want you to have your earbuds in. And so I'll be watching you through Zoom, but I'm going to call you on your phone. And the reason why I do this via phone is because I don't want the internet access to either on my side or your side to cut out in the middle of a regression. And now you have half of an experience. So with a phone, a lot more reliable. And even if the internet cuts out and I lose sight of you through the camera, we're still in communication through the phone. And so we'll go through the regression. That piece lasts anywhere between an hour and a half and 3 to 4 hours. And then after the regression is over, after you've experienced your past or between lives, and I bring you out of the hypnotic state, you then get brought back into consciousness. And once you're back into consciousness, I'll have you come back to the camera and you and I will talk about your experience. Now, when you come out of the hypnotic state, you're still very much in a twilight state, if you will, for the next 20, 30 minutes, where you're perfectly conscious. We're having a conversation, but you're still really connected to that hypnotic state. Now, when I say hypnotic state, you could also think about it being in a different dimension. And so you're still kind of straddling dimensions at that point. So what I want to do during that 15 or 20 minutes after you come out of regression is I really want you to start integrating and processing your experience. So I'll have taken notes throughout the entirety of the regression, and I'm just going to ask you questions and remind you about things. Now, you're going to remember your entire experience. When you come out, it's going to be like the most vivid dream you've ever had. It's not like a dream where you wake up and 5 minutes later you forget it. You're going to remember it for years and years and years. I mean, I still remember mine like it was yesterday. So, but I'm just going to take you through some of the memories and help and see if you can draw connections between your current life, what happened in your past life, what lessons did you learn, and that's really important because it's such a healing part of the process is really connecting those dots together. And then I'll leave you over the next week or so just to continue to process it. You know, you're going to journal, you're going to, when you meditate, if anything comes to you about the experience, you'll note those things. And I'll check in on you and make sure that you're doing well and see if there's anything else that you wanted to share about your experience. But that's really how it works. And you can learn more about past life regression by checking out sacredstairways.com. That's my website. And there's information on past and between lives. And I think you'll really enjoy the content that's there. And you can, if you're interested in signing up for an appointment with me, you can do that on the website there. Or if you want to go find somebody else, feel free and do that. I just want to be a source of information for you about this practice because it is such a beautiful thing. And so with that being said, I know I've talked your ear off. Again, it's something, this is a topic this is a practice that I so believe in, and I so want as many people to experience this because it is so life-changing. So thank you for your time. And I will say until we speak next time, we'll have guests back on the show. It's not going to be me interviewing myself. And until next time, thank you so much for listening in. Check out SpiritWoke.com, where we have a whole library of past podcast episodes. And if you're interested in reaching out to me, you can reach me through either SpiritWoke.com, or you can reach me on sacredstairways.com, or if you Google SpiritWoke, you'll find our Facebook page and our Instagram account and all that, so you can connect with me that way. But either way, thank you again for your time. May you be well. Sending peace, love, and light your way. Namaste.
Thanks for listening to the SpiritWoke Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, Please subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to check out our website, SpiritWoke.com, and connect with the SpiritWoke community on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just search SpiritWoke. Join us next time for another edition of the SpiritWoke Podcast. Namaste.